But at the same time, if it has a silver lining, what I think it's going to be is, I was just yesterday at the governor's convention in Orlando talking to lawmakers. The amount of pressure regulators are getting today about this situation is extreme. It's the number one issue now in financial services. So these bills, like the Transparency Act for stablecoins and the Digital Commodity Act, which have been sitting around, floating around forever, not moving forward for whatever reason you can speculate, are now getting new focus, and we're going to have to push some regulation. In the meantime, I'm moving my assets off all unregulated exchanges, and we're putting them in Canada, where we can find a regulated exchange company called BitBuy, public. And the name of the company is Wonderfy that trades there. So we bought shares. We own a piece of the company, and so that gives us access to the statements the company's making. In addition, it's regulated by the OSC, which is the equivalent of the SEC, the Ontario Securities Commission. There is no commingling of accounts. The assets cannot be lent out. They are scrutinized by the regulator. Proof of assets scrutinized by the regulator. Environment right now that I can find. The very first license ever granted worldwide was to BitBuy, that is a broker dealer attached to a crypto exchange in Canada. In my opinion, that is the safest place on earth to put assets. So I can also see that it's also regulated as a public company. It's listed in Canada as Wonderfy. You're going to see billions of dollars leave unregulated exchanges looking for somewhere in the world where they can be put safely. And that right now is Canada. That's where my assets are going. It's a great question. Here's why. When you're working in an environment like mine, where you mark to market all your assets every 12 hours, including all the stocks, all the bonds, all the private equity positions, all the venture positions, all the crypto positions, every 12 hours, we need to mark to market that so that our financial services director can see them, make sure that we're not leveraged, for example. Then we have to report that to the auditor. Then we have to report that to the regulator of whatever jurisdiction they're in. Cold storage is not useful for that. You don't have the liquidity that you need. So, for example, if I'm running a mandate, and here's a good example. Let's say I'm running a mandate that only allows up to 5% in Bitcoin, 5% in Ethereum, 5% in Solana, whatever. And all of a sudden the prices move in that 12 hours and I'm offside. First, regulation. We can't move forward without regulation. And we've been stalled out as the various regulators fight the turf wars over who should regulate what. For example, should stablecoin be regulated by the Fed that oversees currency, or should it be regulated by the SEC? Or should it be regulated by the agency that does payment systems? While they fight, there's no regulation and we can't advance. I feel terrible for all the retail investors that got wiped out here, but this whole industry can't advance as it should without regulation, because we can't attract sovereign wealth and pension to it. They refuse to invest because they have no platform to do it on a compliant basis. And they're certainly not going to invest on an unregulated, rogue platform. I don't pick any one of them. These unregulated platforms are never going to get institutional capital after what's happened here, ever. Not now, not ever. So the whole point is we need this regulation. In addition, crypto's not going away. It's too productive. It's too useful. It provides a lot of services with transparency and lower cost than the existing systems do today. And I'm talking about, whether you want ACH or a SWIFT transfer or a Fed wire. These things are really old and inefficient.
Was done. He was meeting with Gary Gensler. There are quotes that I want to just quickly show you one of these quotes. Hold on a second to try and find these quotes. It says, I want to be clear about saying the SEC was on the brink of offering relief and exemptions for FTX because FTX was considered an adult in the room in DC who said the right things and whose family had favorable political connections to Gary Gensler, who was asleep at the wheel. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's going to burn. This story will burn out in 48 hours, and I'll tell you why. Gensler's agenda and his calendar is public. Sam Bankman-Fried made multiple attempts in Washington to get regulation, particularly on options trading and derivative trading around crypto. And he met with everybody. He was one of the loudest voices towards getting regulation because he wanted to be able to do it in the US and have the same feature set that the international platform had in the US, which it didn't have. So if you in order to use all the features of the FTX platform, you couldn't do it in the US. You had to register it in another country. It was written down to zero over the weekend. I spoke to many other institutional investors who had assets on the platform. Because we are audited in many cases by the same firms. The auditing firms were talking to each other. The lawyers were talking to each other. We have to mark to market in our operating company every 12 hours, as I said earlier. So we mark to market on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, zero on our investment in FTX International, zero on our investment FTX USA, zero on all assets which had disappeared from our accounts. So that was a tough day. That's a hit. But we have many investments. We have compliance that forces the discipline of diversification, both on positions and on institutions. We don't own all our crypto on FTX. We don't do that because that's not compliant for us in our rules on how we operate our business. So my biggest concern now, and I talked to the auditors about this, and we talked about this earlier, is where can I put them? And for now, it's Canada. It's BitBuy, account there. He confirmed to me in a very rational conversation, it was short but rational, the number was 8 billion. I got back on the phone with all of the institutions that I work for in the indexing business that were asking me, what's the number? What are the terms? What's the number? While that conversation was happening, by around 3 p.m, that interview with Gensler at the SEC started to circulate worldwide. And it was clear that he was bringing out a very hard hammer onto this situation. The minute that happened, every sovereign wealth fund backed off because they can't go offside with the SEC. They put most of their assets in the S&P 500. So after multiple phone calls back and forth, and the time zone was 12 hours to some of these countries. So that is what happened on Thursday. Friday, you saw what happened. Over the weekend, the hack occurred. If it in fact is a hack, we have, there's a lot of allegations, but I can tell you as a unit holder in an institutional account, it was cleaned out. There's nothing there. It's a zero balance. Now, what I don't know, let's be fair, was it put in cold storage? Was it hacked? I have put my feelers into the company to ask for an answer. I have not heard anything back yet. In my investment career, what I've learned to do is to wait for the facts. And so I can guarantee you every single token, every single dollar, every stable coin involved in this situation, by the time this is over, you will know what happened to it. You will know which wallet it is. We may never find out who owns the wallet, obviously, you know that, but it'll all be disclosed. Now, that allegation is sweeping from accounts, corporate accounts, hedge fund accounts, operation companies accounts, and investing them in speculative venture investments. Yeah, I'd like to know more about that. Let's see if that's true. And if that's the case, or as others have alleged, this is a large margin call that occurred between Alameda and FTX. Let's find out if that's true. Let's find out if $2 billion was stolen. Let's find out if this hacker was an employee of FTX, as has been alleged. There's so much BS out there that is not based on any facts yet. We just got to wait.